Beaches are usually places for fun, parties with friends and good vibes. But sometimes the ocean has other plans. The waves can wash unexpected things onto the sand, quickly turning a good time into something strange. Get ready to see some truly odd evidence. These are the 15 strangest things ever washed up on beaches. Number 15. Megalodon shark. Sharks washing up on beaches both dead and alive is not all that uncommon. In fact, neither are shark attacks, with around 100 reported every year. But what's perhaps quite unique in this case is that the shark that washed up on an Australian beach looks nothing like other sharks in the area. What's going on? This footage makes the list for the 15 strangest things washed up on beaches because the shark in the video looks more like the supposedly extinct Megalodon shark, a relative of the great white, than it does any other. Is there a chance the species could still be hidden in the dark depths of the ocean today, not at all extinct like we've been led to believe? The shark was seen dead floating in the shallow waters of an Australian beach, and it was enormous. Its size looked more in line with the average 55-foot length of a megalodon rather than the smaller great white or mako shark. Megalodons lived anywhere between 2.6 million and 16 million years ago, with sea temperature changes thought to wipe them out over time. Their teeth were up to 7 inches long, and they had 10 times the mass of the largest great white shark. There haven't been any proven sightings of the megalodon in modern times, but there's a first time for everything. Number 14. San Francisco tombstones. Cities can grow at rapid, unprecedented paces, which can often mean some pretty drastic changes to accommodate newcomers. A prime example of how drastic those changes is the relocation of cemeteries throughout the central parts of San Francisco. In the 1920s and 30s, many central city cemeteries were relocated to make way for shopping centers, housing developments, and more. The remains were relocated to other cemeteries at no cost to the families. However, if families wanted to remove a headstone, they had to pay for it themselves. Most chose not to, and thousands of tombstones were recycled for city projects, one of which was shoring the Ocean Beach seawall. Now, when strong winds shift sands, it's not uncommon for random tombstones to become unearthed along the shoreline. To an outsider, it's a strange phenomenon, but not if you understand the story behind it. In 2014, many people were alarmed to discover that several tombstones had been uncovered on the beach, some fully intact. A San Francisco historian said it has happened before and will happen again. The sands cover them up, unearth them, and the tombstones make the news once more. How soon we forget, he said. So it's not a mystery, but it's still pretty weird. Number 13. Civil War cannonballs. To the untrained eye, this pile of debris on a Charleston beach in South Carolina would just be thought of as trash. It would be cleared away without a second thought, and no one would be any the wiser. But former Folly Beach Mayor Richard Beck, who knew a bit about the Civil War, quickly realized the trash was anything but. Instead, it was 16 rusted cannonballs that posed a potential risk to beachgoers, even if they lay half submerged in sand. Hurricane Matthew hit the southern United States with full force in 2016. People lost their lives, homes were flooded, and the damage and destruction went on for miles. But during the chaos and utter devastation of homes, the beaches were thrown into disarray as well, and the cannonballs were unearthed from their sandy tomb beneath. Richard Beck realized they were cannonballs even in their decayed state when he noticed the hole in one of them. Richard knew the fuses of cannonballs went into those holes, which allowed them to explode. He called the Charleston County Sheriff's Office bomb squad, who, with the help of the Air Force Explosive Ordnance Team, detonated them in a controlled setting. But finding cannonballs, as strange as it is anywhere else, is pretty standard in the southern parts of the United States. The beach where the cannonballs were found was where Union troops got ready to storm Fort Morris. The area also has a lot of history with Civil War conflicts, which means it's a hot spot for relic hunters looking to retain their own unique part of American history. Number 12. Deadly German U-boat. In 1918, approximately 175 miles from Cape Villano in Spain, a German U-boat launched a torpedo that sunk a British steamer known as Wellington. 40 miles from Tory Island, another torpedo was launched which took down the Arca, a British tanker. This submarine was on a mission to bring down the British, but it was cut short by the Imperial German Navy's surrender later that same year. The submarine may have done some real damage, but it was now of no use to anyone. It was decided at that point that the U-boat would be dragged to France and used for scrap. However, in April 1919, the dragging hawser broke off in a storm in the English Channel. The submarine ran aground on the beaches of Hastings, Sussex, smack bang in front of the Queen's Hotel. Locals and the military tried every idea and method under the sun to move the submarine back into the water to be dragged away. They tried tractors, vehicles, even a French destroyer to shoot it apart so it would be easier to move. Nothing worked. Given how close it was to the public, blowing it up wasn't an option. While the various options were pondered, the U-boat became a tourist attraction. The town clerk charged people to climb the deck, and the money raised, around £300, was used to hold an event for soldiers returning from war. However, Chief Boatman William Hurd and Chief Officer W. Moore, who conducted the tours, suddenly came down ill with what was thought to be food poisoning, and the tours were stopped. When their conditions worsened, lethal gas leaking from the submarine's battery cells was thought to have created abscesses on their brains and lungs. Both men lost their lives. The novelty was starting to wear off, and people wanted the boat gone. Eventually, it was broken up and sold for scrap, and the deck gun was gifted to the town. However, deterioration caused its removal in 1921. The last piece of evidence of a giant submarine on a random public beach. Now it's time for today's topic. In February 2026, a single photo exploded across Facebook groups in Baja California, Mexico. Beachgoers near San Felipe woke to find a massive shark carcass washed ashore, dwarfing pickup trucks and drawing crowds before authorities arrived. Witnesses said the animal's head was wider than a car hood, its teeth still embedded with fishing line and torn netting. Local fishermen claimed they had never seen anything that size in the Gulf of California, not even during peak great white season. Rumors spread fast. Some blamed deep-sea mining noise, others whispered about something larger forcing it toward shore. By noon, police cordoned off the beach and removed the body overnight. No official species confirmation was released. The photo vanished, but screenshots remain, and so do the questions about what's really moving beneath those waters. Number 11. Ancient Megalodon Tooth. There's been a possible sighting of an entire Megalodon washing up on an Australian beach, but there's also been another discovery of a single Megalodon tooth as well. A shark-mad 7-year-old boy had been out searching for shark teeth on Myrtle Beach in South Carolina, something his family did while vacationing in the area every year. Foster Frazier knew he had come across something special when he washed the object off in the water. What first looked like a rock was now clearly a giant tooth. Regular shark teeth are up to 4 inches long, but a megalodon's could be over 5 inches. According to Foster's mom, he was the perfect kid to find the tooth. He reads lots of books about sharks, wears shark-themed clothing, and had even said that he would one day love to find the tooth of a megalodon. That day in 2016 was his lucky one. The tooth is millions of years old and is now on display in Peoria, Illinois at the Riverfront Museum. Number 10. Baby grand piano. Have you ever threatened to throw your neighbor's musical instrument from the nearest great height just to get some much-needed peace and quiet? In most cases, it's a threat, but has someone finally followed through? Someone walking along the Manhattan side of the East River came across a baby grand piano underneath the Brooklyn Bridge. Out of all places to find a piano, this is possibly one of the more absurd ones. Witnesses described the instrument lying on its side, keys exposed, as river water lapped against the polished wood. The contrast between the elegant curves of the piano and the industrial steel of the bridge made the scene feel surreal. Commuters slowed their pace, unsure whether they were looking at a prank, a protest, or the aftermath of a dramatic breakup. Some wondered how such a heavy object could have been moved there without anyone noticing. Theories multiplied as quickly as the photos, ranging from late-night dares to elaborate performance art. A few musicians even debated whether the instrument could be salvaged and restored. Others worried about what the river would do to the delicate strings and soundboard. As the tide shifted, the piano seemed almost staged, as if waiting for an audience. The longer it sat there, the more it transformed from trash into a temporary landmark. By the end of the day, the mystery mattered less than the shared moment of collective curiosity it sparked. Some people were quick to call it a viral marketing campaign, but for what purpose? Others think it could be art or a quick disposal to save money on landfill fees. Whatever the reason, it quickly went viral. It appeared all over social media, and people visited in their dozens to photograph it and even try and play it. Strangely enough, this baby grand piano is not the only one to wash up on a beach. It turns out that 2 people didn't like their neighbors playing a noisy instrument at night. A second, burned piano was found in Biscayne Bay in Miami, Florida, a few years before. Number 9. 80-million-year-old dinosaur thigh bone. Imagine a world where dinosaurs roamed Washington. Sounds crazy, right? But 80 million years ago, it was reality. Scientists had been looking for marine invertebrates and fossilized animals in the San Juan Islands not far from Seattle when they stumbled across a fossilized bone in a marine rock in 2012. They immediately got in touch with the University of Washington paleontologists, and a team was sent out to excavate the fossil. Given the hardness of the rock, the process took a full day and another 18 months to prepare it for analysis. Scientists weren't even sure what they had, so the long, slow process could have all been for nothing. During that waiting period, the fossil sat quietly in the lab, its true identity locked inside layers of ancient stone. Researchers debated possibilities, wondering if it belonged to a large marine reptile or perhaps an unknown prehistoric creature. Every careful scrape during preparation felt like a gamble, with the risk of damaging the specimen always looming. The team worked slowly under microscopes, removing millimeters of rock at a time. Excitement grew with each newly exposed surface, even though no defining features had appeared yet. There were moments when frustration set in and doubts crept back into the room. Still, the unusual density and size of the bone hinted that it was something extraordinary. The fact that it had been preserved in marine rock only deepened the mystery. Paleontologists knew that if it truly was a land dinosaur, it would rewrite part of the region's prehistoric story. Everyone involved understood that discoveries like this come along only once in a career. However, when they were eventually able to turn the bone over, they realized it was a thigh bone from a meat-eating theropod dinosaur, such as a T-Rex. Given the location of the bone, scientists believe the dinosaur died near the sea, was thrown around in the waves, and finally settled among the clams. Number 8. Garfield phones. For close to 4 decades, locals in France around the Aros coast of Brittany have been dealing with pieces of orange plastic washing up on their beaches. All parts have a common theme. They all come from the 1980s Garfield phones, which were all the rage at the time. However, they are not all the rage now, and locals were starting to grow weary of the plastic contamination. Where was it coming from? Why did it carry on for nearly 40 years? Each winter storm seemed to cough up another bright orange relic, faded but unmistakable. Children found receivers and buttons tangled in seaweed, while adults shook their heads at the persistence of the plastic. Some fragments were chewed smooth by waves into pebble-like shapes, while others looked jagged, as if broken only yesterday. Locals began to treat the sightings like a macabre scavenger hunt, comparing strange new finds after every high tide. A few artists even started collecting the pieces to turn them into sculptures, attempting to reclaim some meaning from the mess. Environmental groups used the phones during beach cleanups as a shocking visual symbol of pollution that simply refuses to disappear. Rumors spread that the source must be cursed, or that multiple spills had occurred over the years. Fishermen claimed they saw the same fragments return again and again, looping endlessly along the coastline. The phones became eerie symbols of a decade long gone, preserved not in museums but in sand and surf. All the while, the sea kept its secret, scattering clues but never revealing the full truth. Many people had an inkling that the phones were coming from a shipwrecked or lost shipping container, but until one was found, no one would know for sure. The mystery dragged on for all those years, but was then solved in 2019 after an anti-litter marketing campaign surrounding the plastic attracted the attention of a farmer. He was able to pinpoint where he had seen one of the phones in a storm in the 1980s. Journalists were then able to discover a shipping container in a sea cave that was only accessible at low tide. Given the container's location and how it's buried underneath rocks, it will never be able to be removed. Therefore, Garfield phone fragments will probably always wash up on the beach, a harsh reminder of how long plastic lasts and how much damage it can genuinely do. Number 7. Snowballs. Most children who grew up with white Christmases will be familiar with the snowman building process. You cup some snow in your little mittened hands, form a ball, then gently push it along the ground until it gathers up more snow. Before you know it, you've got 3 round balls ready to stack on top of each other for the perfect snowman. This very process is what caused thousands of natural snowballs to end up in northwest Siberia in the Gulf of Ob. Strange but very cool. Around 11 miles of the coastline was covered with snowy and icy balls up to 3 feet in diameter. From a distance, the shoreline looked almost artificial, as if someone had carefully placed giant white marbles along the frozen beach. Some of the spheres were nearly perfect, while others showed rough layers like tree rings, revealing how they slowly grew over time. As waves nudged them back and forth, the snowballs rolled just enough to collect new layers of slush and ice. Locals wandered among them, comparing sizes and taking photos, unsure if they were witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime event. Children tried to climb them, while adults wondered how long they would last before melting or breaking apart. The silence of the Arctic coast made the scene feel even more surreal. Scientists explained that the process required a precise balance of temperature, wave action, and freezing conditions. If even one factor were slightly off, the snowballs would never form. That rarity is what made the sight so extraordinary. It was nature casually recreating a childhood activity on a massive scale. They started as small shards of ice, with wind and water causing them to roll into giant snowballs. Locals from the nearby village of Nida, above the Arctic Circle, were stunned with what they were seeing, as it's a rare and almost unheard of environmental process. However, Arctic and Antarctic Research Institute Press Secretary Sergei Lysenkov said it's a natural process. To form balls like these, sludge or slush ice has to form, then the right kind of wind and temperature conditions to cause it to roll. the deconstructed snowmen remain one of the strangest and rarest things to wash up on the beach. Number 6. Huge Lego men. Very few children in the Western world would have had a childhood without Lego. Crafting new worlds out of plastic pieces is a favorite pastime for many. But if you're going to find Lego, it's generally in boxes under kids' beds or stored away in attics, basements, and garages, not supersized and on beaches around the world. That's what makes this find so mysterious. 8-foot-tall Lego men have been washing up on beaches all over the world, and people are both confused and a bit spooked. The giant Lego man, which has Ego Leonard painted on the back and No Real Than You Are on the front, has been a sporadic figure in the news since 2007. He washed up on a beach in Brighton, and then again in the Netherlands with the number 8 on his back. That number made people believe that Ego Leonard the Lego man could be one of many, and they would be right. He was also spotted on a beach in Japan and, more recently, in Siesta Key, Florida. How many Lego men could there be out there? Research into Ego Leonard on the internet brings up information that describes the creator or creation as one from a virtual world. A website with further details says, "My name is Ego Leonard, and according to you, I come from the virtual world, a world that for me represents happiness, solidarity, all green and blossoming with no rules or limitations." With no apparent connection to the giant Lego men, this find remains one of the strangest to wash up on beaches. Number 5. World War II love letters. Like a plot from a romantic war movie, love letters were found washed up on a beach in New Jersey by a 14-year-old boy after Hurricane Sandy in 2012. The boy, Patrick, and his mom, Kathleen Cheney, were walking along the beach when Patrick spotted a box tied with a ribbon. In the box, 457 love letters between Dorothy Fallon and Lynn Farnham between 1942 and 1945. The paper was yellowed and fragile, the ink slightly faded but still deeply personal. Each envelope carried wartime stamps and careful handwriting, frozen in time. Some letters spoke of fear and uncertainty, others of hope, longing, and everyday moments missed. Lynn wrote from afar, often reassuring Dorothy that he would come home. Dorothy's replies were filled with affection, patience, and quiet strength. Reading them felt like eavesdropping on a private love that had survived bombs, oceans, and decades. Kathleen realized these weren't just letters, but a complete emotional record of a relationship shaped by war. The ribbon around the box felt intentional, as if someone had once meant to protect them. It raised the haunting question of who tied it and why it was ever lost. Somehow, the storm had delivered a love story back into the world. The Cheneys took the letters home, and Kathleen started on a mission to track down the rightful owners. The home at the return address had been torn down, and an ad posted online revealed no results. However, when Kathleen visited findagrave.com, she found a listing for Lynn Farnham, who had passed away in 1991. Kathleen made an inquiry, and the love letter couple's niece got in touch. Dorothy was living in a senior high-rise in poor health, and the letters must have floated down the Shrewsbury River to get to their location. However, there were no living relatives in that area, and Dorothy's niece had no idea who would have had the letters. While mystery surrounds where they came from, they are now reunited with their rightful owner. Number 4. A live bomb. A buoy washing up on a beach is nothing to write home about. That happens all the time. But when that buoy turns out to be a live bomb, that's when things get interesting. A family had been picnicking at Buryport in Wales when their 2 young children noticed something washing up on the beach. It was a round metal ball with barnacles on it, and they thought nothing of it. The kids investigated it, had their photo taken with it, and carried on with their picnic. At the time, it seemed like nothing more than a quirky seaside moment, the kind parents laugh about later. Other beachgoers walked past it without a second glance, assuming it was old maritime debris. The children even touched it, curious about its weight and rough, crusted surface. In the photo, they're smiling, completely unaware of how dangerous the object actually was. The sea had hidden its true nature well, disguising it as harmless flotsam. That false sense of safety is what made the situation so unsettling in hindsight. Experts later explained that many wartime explosives remain active even after decades underwater. Salt water can preserve them in a way that delays corrosion rather than neutralizing it. One wrong or drop could have caused catastrophic consequences. It was pure luck, nothing else. That tragedy didn't strike that afternoon. However, when Pembrey Country Park officials announced that the buoy on the beach was a United States military mine bomb, the family was shocked. Someone who had seen their family photo online alerted them to the discovery. The bomb was thought to date back to World War II and had been called in to the bomb squad by a Coast Guard who noticed writing on it once the barnacles started to fall away. The beach was evacuated, and the bomb was detonated in a controlled setting. Number 3. Humongous pipes. Those looking to achieve that sun-kissed look on British beaches were in for the shock of their lives in 2017. Instead of finding sun, sand, and sea creatures, they were graced with 4 giant plastic pipes measuring between 656 and 1,575 feet long. The sheer scale of the pipes made them impossible to miss, stretching across the shoreline like artificial sea serpents. Early morning walkers stopped in disbelief, unsure whether they were looking at industrial debris or some bizarre modern art installation. Social media quickly lit up with photos, with locals joking that the beach had been upgraded into a construction zone overnight. Children climbed on them, while others worried they might be dangerous or leaking something toxic. Emergency services cordoned off sections of the beach as a precaution, adding to the surreal atmosphere. For a brief moment, the quiet Norfolk coast became a national talking point. Rumors spread wildly, from failed oil projects to secret military operations. Even seasoned fishermen admitted they had never seen anything like it wash ashore. The incident served as a reminder of just how much industrial activity quietly moves across the world's oceans. And for those who stumbled upon it unexpectedly, it turned an ordinary beach day into a story they would retell for years. According to the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency in the UK, the large plastic tubes were bound for a significant project in Algeria. They were being towed but came loose and ended up on the North Norfolk coast at Eccles-on-Sea, Sea Palling, and Horsey. Other pipes also became loose but were contained in the water. A recovery operation was immediately underway, with the pipes being refloated and returned to their Norwegian manufacturers. While they were large and unsightly, they didn't pose a pollution threat. Number 2. Giant tree. There are few things as random as a casual walk on the beach being interrupted by a giant tree, but that was the case for the community of La Push in Washington. The township is no stranger to large, towering trees, but they typically form part of the landscape and, in an upright position. However, after high tides and strong winds, residents of La Push were puzzled to find not only driftwood all over their local beach, but the largest tree they had ever seen lying on the sands. The logs stretched along the beach like a grounded shipwreck, its bark stripped smooth by salt and sand. Locals gathered around it, running hands along growth rings thick enough to trace decades with a fingertip. Some guessed it had broken free during a coastal storm upriver, while others thought it must have been ripped from a bluff by a king tide. Its root ball was nowhere to be seen, suggesting the sea had gnawed it away over miles of tumbling travel. Gulls perched along the length as if it were a new jetty, and children climbed it like a playground. The smell of resin still lingered, oddly fresh for something that had clearly battled the Pacific. Elders in the community recalled stories of ghost logs that appear after rare storm combinations. Each story carried the same awe at how small people feel when nature rearranges the coastline overnight. Standing there, it was impossible not to imagine the journey from forest giant to beach-bound relic. A retired schoolteacher by the name of Philip Lockman photographed the giant drift log in 2010 with his 6-foot-tall daughter standing beside him. She looked tiny standing in front of it, with the tree's trunk at least 3/4 of her height above her. While Philip didn't take measurements, trees that grow in the area are often up to 200 feet tall and up to 10 feet in diameter. The most common trees in the area, of which this drift log might be one, are western red cedar, Sitka spruce, and fir. Given the size and scale of the tree, it sure makes you wonder about the wind and tidal power it took to bring it to the shore in the first place. Number 1. Giant eyeball. It's not every day you come across a fish lying on a beach, so it's certainly even less common to come across a large body part from one. A beachcomber was roaming Florida's Pompano Beach when he stumbled across a giant eyeball. The object was about the size of a softball, glossy, milky white, and unsettlingly intact despite the harsh surf. People nearby initially thought it might be some kind of discarded prop or a hoax washed ashore, but a closer look revealed veins, tissue, and the unmistakable curvature of a real eye. The discovery quickly drew a small crowd, all speculating wildly about what kind of creature could have lost something so enormous. Some whispered about sharks, others about deep-sea monsters rarely seen near shore. A few even wondered if it could belong to something that shouldn't exist at all. The fact that it had washed up alone, with no other remains nearby, only deepened the mystery. Storms in the days prior hinted that rough currents might have torn it free from a much larger body offshore. Whatever it came from, it clearly didn't belong to anything ordinary. It was unmistakably an eyeball, but from what creature, no one knew. He promptly handed over the eye to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, who then sent it on to the St. Petersburg Fish and Wildlife Research Institute in Florida. Genetic testing would uncover from which critter this eye came. Carlisle Eggleston, a spokesperson for the institution, said a large fish, such as a tuna or swordfish, was the most likely culprit. The bone around the eye ruled out a squid. If it did come from a fish, it's likely to be one that's far larger than most people have ever seen before. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.